night unstitched itself from the savannah and left a seam of footprints that didn't belong to any lion, hyena, or man. 3 toes forward, 2 backward, pads the size of a dinner plate, claws scoring obsidian like chalk. The first to find them was a girl named Abeni, water jug on hip, feet dusty with the kind of innocence that makes the world look kinder than it is, until it isn't. She followed the prince to the sacred mountain Okuthwale, where the kingdom set its storms. The prince circled a trampled clearing, reeds broken and blood pooled black in the early light. Not a carcass, not a bone, just the dragging arc of something heavy taken away, and claw marks in a straight line, as if the beast had carried its own chains. He kept the valley safe last night, her mother would say later, eyes low, mouth hard. He keeps it safe. Don't ask safe how it bleeds. The palace gates opened at sunrise. The king returned at sunrise. This is how order kept its shape. Trumpets pealed across the courtyard. King Nkoro Mabale stepped out robed in indigo and gold, face a forgiveness a man could drink. He listened to disputes in the dust and judged with the soft gravity that comes from knowing your people by name. Abeni watched him from the crowd, something in his posture, an almost imperceptible flinch when a drum beat struck. A glance toward the western sky where last night's moon had fled. His right hand flexed, a tremor beneath the ring with the moonstone sigil. The throne's arm, fresh gouges hidden beneath a velvet cover. Servants moved like shadows to keep it unseen. Beyond the walls, trucks grumbled. Mercenaries with clean boots and unclean hearts had set their eyes on Okuthwale's veins. Rare earth, lithium, secrets men kill for. They laughed at the local myths of a lion-sized wolf that roamed under full moons. Let the dog come. Their leader smirked, cigarette pointing at the sacred slope. We brought traps made for gods. Doves startled from the baobabs. The sound they made wasn't music. The king's eyes lifted as if the air itself had warned him. He dismissed court early. Storm tonight, he said to the people. Hard one. He didn't look at the sky. He looked at the throne. Which marks hold the kingdom together? Those carved by justice or those carved by claws? He moved among the petitions like a shepherd among lambs. Aboard a quarrel, he settled with shared wells and a rotating watch, 2 hands clasped above a map etched into dust. A grieving father whose son disappeared near the mountain. Nkoro knelt, foreheads touching, the way old men pledge their names to each other's grief. We will find him, the king said. It felt like a prayer he had already failed. The Queen Mother, Yara of the West Wind, stood at the column, gold net in her hair, eyes like a storm that remembered you. Only she knew the ritual chamber's true smell. Only she had steadied her sons, trembling after nights that didn't end cleanly with dawn. The moonstone on her necklace, a twin to the king's ring. 2 halves of an old sin. Whispers ran like lizards along the wall. Poachers gone missing, traps sprung with nothing inside but blood. A militia sighted on the ridge, and under it all, devotion. People loved him because life had been kinder under his crown. The crops obeyed rain again. Bandits came less. Men who beat their wives slept outside the walls. The king toured the healers' tents. His hand lingered on a boy's fevered brow. His smile broke the fever more than the herbs did. When he stood to leave, he winced. The drum didn't cause the pain. It counted it. The moon would rise full tomorrow, but the body keeps its own calendar. Tendon twitches and jaw aches where bone remembers other shapes. He retreated to the inner hall. The throne's velvet cloth slipped. A gouge flashed. The steward's face drained. We're mending, Majesty. Mend the story too, Nkoro said, gentle. A strong tale keeps wolves at bay. He almost laughed at his own blasphemy. Courier dusted from the road burst in. Mercenary convoys confirmed. Drone shots buzzing over the mountain like flies on sacrament. Their leader wore a scarf, the red of rich people's blood. He calls himself Barrow, the courier said. Says he's here to negotiate extraction rights. Extraction of what? The king asked, already knowing the answer. Whatever the mountain's bones will sell. Nkoro dismissed the court. He closed the hall. Alone, he set the crown on the arm with the gouge, the way a sinner lays offerings on the altar he scratched. "I am your king," he told the empty room, "and your leash." From the courtyard, children playing moon crown, one wearing a reed circlet, the others pretending to be jackals that bowed. If the crown is the leash, who holds it when the leash snaps? He descended the obsidian steps with Mother Yara, torchlight smearing their shadows into one long wound. The ritual chamber had no corners, only circles, concentric, painted in ash and ochre. Chains lay coiled like dead serpents. Not iron, meteoric metal, black as memory and cold as debt. Each link engraved with sigils older than the palace itself, jackal eyes, river spirals, crossed moons. "Your heartbeat is fast," Yara said softly. "It is not fear," he lied. "It is always love," she corrected, as mothers do. "Fear of what you will do to what you love." They lit the 7 bowls: salt, milk, oil, dust, blood, water, smoke. The scripture of their house insisted the beast was not an enemy, but a guardian loaned by the mountain when the old wars came. But guardians that only speak in torn throats and missing men make for difficult worship. He sat upon the stone of 2 names, one name carved in a clean royal script, the other scratched ragged below it. Nkoro. The stone kept both, the man and the thing pronounced without vowels. Chains were lifted to his wrists. He did not fight them. Silvered cuffs bit like cold teeth. Yara kissed his forehead. "Return to me," she said. "Not be strong, because strength was a weather that did not always blow your way." "Return to them," he answered. From the ceiling, a narrow shaft opened to the night. Not a window, an invitation. The moon would find him, it always did. The first tremor took him mid-breath. Knees buckled. He gripped the stone and felt the stone grip back, as if it were a heart holding a heart. Nails split. Blood crept down his palm like ink, writing the old pact on his skin. Outside, the drums began the slow cadence, not celebration, accounting. If a king cannot master his body, can he keep a country in its bones? Time dilated into the little seconds you never remember, until you're screaming through them. The first thing to go was his voice. The throat thickened like the earth pushed sap through it. Syllables clogged and turned into growl. Teeth budded. Along the gums, small at first, then lengthening like knives deciding to be born. He spat blood. It sprayed silver in the torchlight. The moon slid down the shaft like a white blade. Wherever its light touched him, hair rose, black silver, and skin rippled with a shudder like a horse shaking flies. His hands widened, palms ungodly broad, fingers telescoping, nails extruding into claws that clicked once against the stone like a judge's gavel. Verdict: guilty of being. Chains tightened. Sigils sparked. He threw himself backward, spine arching with an audible set of pops, vertebrae rearranging into the geometry of a predator. The sound was obscene and holy. Mother Yara did not weep. "Royalty does not erase the cost by naming it something nicer. Stay," she said. The word belonged to childhood and dogs and grief. He met her eyes for a breath. Man looked at Mother, then Wolf looked at Meat. The mercenary drones drifted above the palace now, bright red dots painting stone. Barrow watched the thermal feed, smirking at the shape that did not look like a man and did not exactly look like an animal. "Big dog," he said. "We'll collar it." Below, the moon crown stood. He swelled against steel. The chains sang. The beast's ribs soared as if every breath threatened to cut him in half. And then he learned to breathe like a storm. In, like swallowing a village. Out, like the village happened to sinners. He tore free. He did not go for his mother. He leapt for the shaft, claws finding purchase on the smooth wall, climbing with the ugliness of something that refuses limits. He erupted into the night in a shower of plaster and oath dust. The drums faltered. The city held its breath because the city remembered the last time. On the ridge, a silhouette in a red scarf said, "Now, what is unleashed to defend a kingdom? Who defends the kingdom from it?" The savannah lit itself with panic. Gazelles bolted for no reason they could name. Hyenas gave way like bureaucrats before a king. The beast took the ridge in 4 beats, and Barrow's first trap clanged. A mouth of steel teeth slammed shut, on air. The second trap didn't miss. Wired harpoon bit thigh. The beast's howl sheared birds off branches. Barrow laughed into his radio. "It bleeds." Then the meteoric metal in the harpoon kissed the sigils scorched into the beast's hide and woke them. The cable glowed, the winch burned out. The trap died whimpering like a machine ashamed of itself. The moonlight made mirrors in the beast's eyes. 2 mercenaries took their step too late in life to be considered wise. Claw, gut, fall, blood smoked on cold grass. He ran not like an animal, like a choir of animals, each with a different prayer. He found Barrow by smell, expensive gun oil, cinnamon gum, cowardice under cologne. The beast landed so hard the ground remembered. Haze lifted from Barrow's boot tips. He shot point blank into a chest that had a town living under it. The bullets flattened as if they'd come here for mercy. The king inside howled no. The beast outside howled now. Somewhere within the shared cartilage, a line flexed. The claw swiped for Barrow's throat and stopped a hair short, caught on the last chain still buckled to one wrist. Yara's gift. A length of old night that remembered rules. Barrow dove, rolled, clicked a detonator. Charges winked along the mountain's flank. The sacred face of Okuthwale hiccuped fire. Stones roared. The beast spun to the mountain the way a man turns toward his name. He left Barrow alive with terror, which is a kind of wound that walks. He sprinted into the smoke and found villagers who'd run toward the blasts because love runs that way. Rubble pinned one boy, the fever child from the healer's tent. The beast stood over him, breath hammering, muzzle twitching between meat and mercy. Abeni's voice cut the night. "Your Majesty." She had brought the reed crown from their game. It shook on her small head. The beast's head tilted. "Reed circlet, child. Mother, mountain. The soul arranges its altars quickly when it must." He shoved the boulder off the child with a howl that sounded like a sermon translated by thunder. He licked the boy's face, healing nothing but fear, and was gone into smoke. If the monster remembers mercy, how long until hunger edits that memory? The morning found what night made and did not apologize for it. The sacred slope bled a streak the color of a king's cloak. Barrow's men counted their missing by boots without feet. The villagers counted theirs by names carved into bark. The Queen Mother stood at the crater's lip, hair net black with ash. She spoke rights over 2 bodies, one mercenary, one shepherd. She did not change the words. Law, under grief, must be blind, or it is only preference in a robe. Nkoro woke, naked in a wash of blood and dust at the base of a baobab. Flies declared parliament. The broken harpoon hung from his wrist chain like an argument that had lost its point. He tore it free and straightened the bending in his body until man fit inside again. It is strange, returning to fingers. He wept. At the ordinary of hands, he returned to the palace through the servants' gate. Yara wrapped him in a burial cloth because shame is a death we survive many times. "You saved a child," she said, having heard with the network only mothers have. "You killed men. They were killing a mountain," he answered. "I have become a geography lesson." The council demanded a statement. So did the people. So did the mountain, but mountains do not hold press conferences. He sat on the throne, velvet now bare. The gouge bared itself like a vicious smile. He admitted to nothing and promised everything. He would negotiate with the invaders. He would harden the borders. He would keep them safe. The fever boy lived. The father brought him to the gates at noon. The boy placed a reed circlet at the steps and backed away the way one leaves bread for a god that listens but does not speak. Nkoro spoke to the guards, soft and final. "No one harms the children who call me monster. When a king's mercy protects them from the monster who protects them from the king. Mark survival. Swear the oath. Return for the next moon. Subscribe. Barrow came to parley under a white flag, which is a sheet men use when they can't find better lies. He named contracts and royalties and modernity. He named the kingdom resource-rich, the way a butcher calls a lamb profitable. Nkoro named land as ancestor, mountain as altar. Men with clipboards hate sacraments. They do not file. Barrow smiled the way knives shine. Your security asset. We can help you control it. We've collared worse in places with fewer vowels. He slid a case across the table. Inside, a collar forged in the same meteoric alloy. New sigils etched, cold as a saint's refusal. A gift. Yara touched the metal and hissed. This alloy was stolen from our old graves, she said. Barrow blinked. He had purchased it from an auction house with champagne. Night approached sideways, purple teeth closing. Nkoro stood at the obsidian threshold and made a pact with the mountain without words. He would not flee his people to save them. He would chain himself to their sight. In the ritual chamber, he ordered the floor open to the courtyard, the city's eyes. If I cannot govern my night, he told Yara, let them judge the whole of me. The 7 bowls were filled. The chain was doubled. The collar lay like a question. He did not put it on. Abeni pushed through the crowd carrying a reed crown and a charcoal mark on her brow, a simple sigil she'd copied from the chain. She held up the crown to the king, as if crowning a story that needed an end other than teeth. You kept me safe, she said. Please, keep you. The drums began. The collar gleamed. The moon rose, fat with decision. Is a king still a king if his people must love him across a chain? The change took him like arithmetic, predictable, cruel. Neck stretched, chest broadened, fingers cracked into equations no mathematician writes down because answers that bleed are not publishable. He roared and stopped because he had chosen the city's eyes as his leash. The beast staggered, disoriented by so much witness. Shame is a bridle if the horse remembers home. Barrow's drones dove, the collar in a grappling rig aimed at the king wolf's throat. The rig fired, the collar snapped, clattered against the chain, sparks singing like choir boys with knives. The beast swung, claws dicing the rig, dragging the drone down like a hawk punishing a snake that learned to fly. Barrow fired the last contingency, charges under the baobab where the king had woken, petty revenge dressed as strategy. The tree groaned like an ancestor forced to stand again. The beast looked at the tree the way a child looks at the mother's grave. He broke the chain. Not to run, to fight. He took Barrow in a single cut that separated soul from swagger. The people screamed, then didn't, because a silence fell that learned to sound like reverence. The beast stood in the courtyard, steam rising from a chest that had been a throne and would be again. Abeni walked forward. Against every rule of every story, the child placed the reed crown on the monster's head. The beast's breath slowed. Something unclenched. He sank to his knees, the posture of worship or surrender, and sometimes they are the same. He placed one massive paw on the palace stones and with a deliberate care you give to holy things, pressed a new mark beside the old gouge on the throne arm. Remember me, the act said, all of me. Dawn cracked the sky and Nkoro woke. On cold stone, naked but crowned in reeds, blood-salted and very human in the way pain makes you small. He looked up at his people. They looked down at their king. No one moved fast. Mother Yara stepped into the circle. Your Majesty, she said, voice the law that outlives paperwork. What shall be the decree? He stood, a reed crown falling, in two. He lifted both halves. He turned to the mountain, scarred but still there, and to the city, scarred but still here. We will plant 1,000 trees. We will bury the dead with both names. We will keep the night with eyes open. He looked at the collar. He ordered it melted into plowshares and bed frames. No neck would carry that weight again. He set the reed halves on the arm of the throne, one on each gouge, marrying mercy to violence, so neither could lie about the other. The crown weighs the same at noon as at midnight. You just feel it more when you bleed. At Whispering Narratives, we don't just tell stories, we keep the doors honest. If you're still breathing, mark your oath before the next full moon. Share this with the one friend you'd guard, even from yourself. Next ritual waits, another kingdom, another curse. Continue the hunt now.